So good afternoon, folks. Just a quick little debrief about my first slide. If you received one of the papers coming into the room, you can feel free to scan that QR code either on the board or on the paper that somebody around you should have to see all the additional materials that I've created out throughout the semester as well as throughout my 4 years here at Penn State. But welcome to my final presentation, best one for last, so they keep saying. So a little bit about me. My name is Cheyenne Bastain-Brown. I have been blessed enough to get to know every single one of you in this room as well as on Zoom. I am from Ralston, Pennsylvania, located in northern PA, about 30 minutes north of Williamsport, where they play the Little League World Series. I did not come from an agricultural background. So I joined FFA my freshman year of high school under Mr. Thomas Hodjanowski at Canton Junior Senior High School, and got to be in the program for 4 years, really got to love agriculture, learn more about it. This was me when I was reciting the FFA Creed at my chapter banquet, the first time I had ever won any type of contest my freshman year. And this is me with a group of my last freshmen, as I like to call them. I was tasked with the job of teaching the freshmen the FFA Creed every single year up until I graduated. In addition, I had a couple of supervised agricultural experiences, which we'll talk about later, which include managing my high school greenhouse for 3 years, as well as raising rabbits. I also have an integral love for advocacy. So I got to serve as the 2018 Troy Fair Queen at the ripe age of 16, and that really delved deeper into wanting to learn more about the industry. So I became the 2022 Lycoming County Dairy Princess and the 2024 Pennsylvania State Honey Queen. I just couldn't stop there. And then finally, these last two photos. So this is my family. I've been blessed to have a super supportive family that's been there for me literally through everything. And then this is my late grandfather. I believe that everything happens for a reason, but I also believe that there's a purpose for that reason. And so I think he's the reason that I decided to come to Penn State and really pursue my dreams. Now, part one, we're going to go a little bit out of order. What experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better agricultural educator? So first things first, I want you to learn a little bit more about me. So I didn't just come straight to college, I took a gap year. And I got to serve as a Pennsylvania FFA state officer alongside 6 other amazing individuals. My year as a state officer was a lot different. It was during COVID time, so I learned a lot about Zoom and digital literacy. But I also got to travel across the Commonwealth and present workshops to students. Now, a fun fact about me, I did not apply to Penn State as agricultural and extension education in the first place. I applied as political sciences, and my year as a state FFA officer and multiple conversations with Dr. Kevin Curry and Mr. Michael Brammer led to me choosing to pursue agricultural education instead. Next, they say you only have 4 years at Penn State, and I wanted to optimize all of my time in those 4 years. So I quite literally joined every single club I possibly could. Up here, we have PSU FFA alumni and supporters. I was an officer for 2 years, led the group in a name change a couple of years ago, and have been involved in the club ever since. I've gotten to serve as an ag advocate, so I've gotten to give tours to prospective students coming on campus. I was involved in Ducks Unlimited, where I learned more about conservation and wildlife habitat. Coley Society, which I got to be inducted alongside ag leaders across the entire college. Up here is for my time in the University Park Undergraduate Association, where I served as the College of Agricultural Sciences representative. And then this is me in my first event as a Teach Ag Avenger. I actually wasn't an Avenger at that time. I just begged Beth Matthew to let me go because I really wanted to see kids. Down here is me at the Collegiate Discussion Meet. I recently just joined Collegiate Farm Bureau here at Penn State, and it's been an awesome experience. Shout out to Kat Kaufman for helping me through that day. And then finally, this is my home away from home, my second family, the brothers at Delta Theta Sigma and the sisters of the Beta Sisterhood. I was blessed to join as an early member and learn a little bit more about what it meant to have a family that was a little bit different, but still was awesome. So I've been pretty blessed to have them in my life all 4 years. Now, as far as internships go, I've had a lot of different experiences. Before I even stepped foot on campus, I was a Global Teach Ag Network intern. So in that capacity, I served as a communications coordinator as well as a GLAG junior or educations director underneath Mrs. Darla Romberger. After I was done with my internship with GTAN, I moved on to work at a thing called Camp Partners. Camp Partners is a summer camp located in Tioga County. They focus in on one topic each year, and the year I worked there, it happened to be agriculture. So I put together agricultural lessons for students pre-K all the way up until the age of 22 with a disability. It was not the traditional classroom, but I'm very thankful for that experience. We'll talk about that a little bit more. In addition, the summer after, I was an intern with the PA Friends of Ag Foundation. My supervisor, Ms. Charlene Espenshay, is actually here today. And I got to learn more about overall curriculum development and lesson planning. So I put together 2 boxes that went out the year after I was done with my internship, as well as got to work on our immersion lab and talk about soil all day, which, if you know me, I love to talk about soil, but nobody else does. And then lastly, I got to work on a project called Grow PA Ag and Food Careers in Pennsylvania, which was a website that we integrated lessons as well as other materials on for teachers and students to discover more about careers in the agricultural industry right here at home. And then finally, this past summer, I think I had one of my favorite experiences. So I got to be a new student orientation leader for the entire university. And I was the only one in the college bag, which I just love to say all the time. I led alongside a group of other new student orientation leaders, about 9,000 students through their orientation coming to Penn State. And I'll say this taught me a lot more about how to be in a classroom with a bunch of teenagers than I think any of my other experiences ever did. Now, as far as key courses, I have a couple that stick out in my mind. There's one thing you need to know about me. I am not an animal science girly. I did not grow up with animals. And I am not an ag mech girly. I have no clue what I'm doing in the ag mech shop. So a couple of these courses really helped me with that. And Animal Science 201, taught by Mr. Dale Olver, I got to learn a lot more about the digestive system, the anatomy and physiology of animals, as well as just overall nutrition, which were concepts that I was like, if they were foreign to me, half the time he was speaking like a different language I didn't understand. But eventually we got there and I made it through the course, and I'm really happy to be using a lot of those concepts in the units I'll be teaching this coming spring. Along with that, RHS 226 is actually a college class about mental health in college students. So it taught me a lot about how to manage my mental health when I had a lot on my plate. And I feel like it'll help me dive deeper into realizing and helping my students realize that student achievement and performance also correlates with their overall mental health while they're in the classroom. And then finally, AE 349 and 350, I know we've heard it and I'm probably beating a dead horse, but Dr. Ewing does a great job in helping us understand how to do kinesthetic and psychomotor skills and how to teach them properly to students. I honestly don't think I would be able to be teaching an electrical wiring class if it wasn't for Dr. Ewing. Sorry, Dad. He's on the Zoom, by the way. My education. So I have a minor in international agriculture. I really want to dive deeper into what our global food system looks like. And I'm hoping to take that into my global ag class in the spring. And then as well, I have certifications in the American Heart Association, CPR, First Aid, and AED. So if there is an issue in the classroom, I can hopefully help with it. Artificial insemination of cattle training, beef quality assurance, and National Safe Tractor machine operator. So Mr. Thomas Hodjanowski taught me how to drive a tractor in high school before I even had my license to drive a car. So now I'm going to get to do that to other students. Yeah, hopefully there's no accidents. As far as professional experiences go, so over the summer, I got to participate in the Pennsylvania Association of Agricultural Educators Summer Conference, where I got to talk to educators from across the state, as well as dive deeper into professional development that I may not have experienced before. This past, like 2 weeks ago, actually, I was at the National Association of Agricultural Educators Conference out in San Antonio, Texas. A couple of things. One, we got to meet with a lot of students who were also on their way to go start student teaching. Two, I got to dive into professional development that was so different and so off the wall from anything PA agriculture could possibly think of. And three, I got to see my box. So I wrote part of that box. I have the box now. And it was super cool to like sit through a workshop that I wrote. So that was super exciting. During my sophomore year, I was in the GOALS program, known as the Global Orientation to Agricultural Learning, and traveled out to the World Food Prize, where I got to meet different laureates who are game changers and innovators in global food security, as well as all of my cohort members from the University of Idaho and Penn State. And then finally, when I was an intern for the PA Friends of Agriculture Foundation, I went to the Ag Educators Institute. This institute's a little bit different. So it focuses on how to implement agricultural education into quite literally any classroom, K through 12, any type of domain. And it really taught me more of those out of box ideas that I can use to really emphasize cross-curricular components within my own classroom as well. For learning experiences, I've had a very diverse experience of getting to teach a lot of different students during my time at Penn State. First things first, during my goals spring immersion, I went to Houston, Texas. So I was in Houston Independent School District, and there were a lot of English language learners. So students who were learning how to speak English as well as learning new content. And that was a barrier that I had to overcome very quickly, but it helped me realize what I can change in the future for my lessons to be more inclusive. Down here, I was a New York Teach Ag ambassador for a semester. I know, crazy. A Pennsylvania girl going to New York, you'd never think that. But I got to go and actually talk to students about what ag is like in New York, what their experiences were, and learn a little bit more about what I can potentially do in the future if I so choose to teach somewhere else. As far as lifelong years, I got to teach a one-day lesson to a group of students that are working on transitioning from high school into college. Each student did have a different disability, so it was an interesting thing to try to kind of gauge their interest in the topic and then also connect it to something that they're interested in specifically. And then finally, camp partners. That was my non-traditional element of education. So I got to teach in a not classroom for an entire year. We were outside the entire time. We spent a lot of time looking at the outdoors and still trying to implement ag in a lot of different ways that particularly pertain to Tioga County. In phase 2, who do I aspire to be as a teacher? So on that little sheet, you'll also see my teaching philosophy. My teaching philosophy has 3 levels. So the first level is experiential learning. I want to provide hands-on learning opportunities to students that they can actually take into industry. That focuses more on the classroom. As far as inclusion, diversity, and equity go, I want to create a welcoming atmosphere for all students, no matter their background. There are going to be students who are exactly like me that didn't come from an ag background, and there are going to be students that do. There are going to be students who come from different socioeconomic areas, and there are going to be students who have different experiences. We really need to play to that in our classrooms each and every day. And then finally, opportunities for success. I don't feel that FFA should be required, but I think it should be highly influenced and highly recommended to students so that they're able to take part in different learning opportunities outside of the classroom as well. As far as my dream program in the future, I'm a girl that dreams big, if you haven't caught on to that. So this is a one-teacher program. In grade 8, I want students to have an optional opportunity to do ag exploration. In grade 9, this is where their prereqs actually start. So they have to take one of these 2 courses to go on to grade 10 and 11. So Introduction to Ag Sci, Introduction to Agricultural Food and Natural Resources. In grade 10, we go to the basic ag classes, like I like to say, plant and soil sciences, animal science, and then basic maintenance and repair. And then from there, we kind of grow. So grade 11 and 12, you can choose between these 6 courses: environmental and natural resources, horticulture and greenhouse, veterinary science, global ag, agricultural business, and leadership. Leadership is a little bit different. It's focusing on those soft skills that you need for any type of interview that you may encounter, or if you're looking to become an officer in the FFA chapter. This is what one of those courses would look like. So we'd start with the introduction to environmental and natural resources, go to careers in environmental and natural resources, and the middle would kind of influence the 4 main topics of the environmental and natural resources CDE in the state of Pennsylvania, including forestry, soils, aquatics, and wildlife, with a couple extra topics in there like avian wildlife, because nobody ever does that. Classroom management, I do have my posters up here. They're pretty hard to see if you're far away. I probably should have printed them bigger. But overall, I have 3 posters that talk about my classroom procedures, expectations, and consequences. Procedures are pretty laid out. When we come in the morning, I want you to do your bell ringer, put away your cell phone, turn in any homework, and then be prepared with any and all materials. This will save us a lot of time. When we're ready to leave class, we're going to clean up, return any materials to their home. So we're going to have specific boxes. And then we're going to complete the exit ticket and return our exit tickets. Overall, I want my students to leave the classroom having a good day with a smile on their face. For my classroom expectations, I have 5. 1 is to come prepared with literally anything they need to be successful: notebooks, pens, markers, stuff like that they can keep in their backpack at all times or carry from class to class. 2, I want them to be determined to learn something new. I want them to come into class and ask questions. I want them to be curious. 3, I want them to be thoughtful. So thoughtful of what they say in and outside of the classroom, and also their actions, because overall, this isn't just my classroom or their classroom, it's our classroom. And I want to make sure that every single student feels welcomed. 4, I want them to be sincere in their feedback and always promote positivity and growth. I feel like sometimes we can be negative Nancy's, and I think that this will overall lead to a lot more of a positive atmosphere in the classroom. And then finally, I want them to be curious. I want them to never be afraid to ask questions. I know I'm not, and I did nag MEC at least 20 times a day to Dr. Ewing, so they can't be scared either. And then finally, consequences. In the event of an undesirable behavior, our first offense is going to be a verbal warning. Our second offense is going to be a change of seat so they can't sit freely. Our third offense is going to be an email/call home to guardians. Our fourth offense is going to be detention. Our fifth offense is going to be guardian teacher conference. And then finally, our sixth offense is going to principal/office referral. This can also include ISS or OSS. For lab integration, I built myself a wood shop. So it has a couple of things in there that I thought were pretty integral. It only has one fire extinguisher, but don't dock me points on that. I couldn't figure out how to get the other one to work. If you look in that folder, there's my lab integration plan. And I also came up with a $15 project. So I actually put together a bug house, a little pollinator house, and I painted it as well. So this can go along with my environmental science class. We can build them in there and then talk about how it helps endangered species or just overall insect populations. And then as well, another $15 project that we could possibly do is a birdhouse. Or if I expand my shop in the future to include welding, I can have a hitch pin. SAE integration or supervised agricultural experience integration. I want to focus on SAE starting in the classroom and building out for student experience and interest. So I want to have chickens in the classroom, agricultural education opportunities, so teaching younger students, and then trout in the classroom where we can collaborate with the local conservation district. And then finally, I really want to have Miss Carol Fay, our SAE specialist for the state of Pennsylvania, come into my classroom each year and talk to my students about how they can develop their SAEs further and kind of make them better engaged towards their interests. Next is FFA integration, so another part of the 3-circle model. Focusing in on this, there are a couple of ways I feel like we can focus on recruitment as well as retention. So I want my students to have an FFA pep rally and spirit week each year during National FFA Week. I think it's fun. It's a great way for them to get involved and have the entire school involved. I want to have the FFA state officers come in and do a visit with not only my ag students, but also my 7th and 8th graders who may be enrolled in the program or interested in the program in the future. I want to collaborate with local organizations like the Farm Bureau to collect items for community service projects. And then finally, I want to integrate CDEs and LDEs into the classroom. I want to have topics that correlate with them so they can dive deeper into the interests they may have. For program marketing, I put together a video. We're not going to watch the video today. I think it's kind of cringy. It was bad. So in the future, I really want my students, and if I have co-teachers, to really focus on program marketing and recruitment and retention. Students talk, and I think we all know that. I think that's pretty obvious. They talk about the teachers that they like, the classes that they like, and why they like it. So making sure that I have a positive influence on my students, but also having my students go out to the 8th grade classes or having an open house type of situation at each beginning school year will allow them to also bring in members that they may see potential in. And I think that that's pretty important. Community integration. So I do want to have the community to have some type of position in the agricultural education program as well on the occupational and local advisory committees. And one way that I want to implement this is through a CBU or a community-based unit. So my unit's going to be forestry. It's going to be completed in the spring. And my plans for success include a lesson on ecosystem services, a visit from a DCNR officer, hosting an Arbor Day celebration with the local elementary and middle schools, and then finally collaborating to plant saplings. Either the saplings can be planted at the school, near the school, or at the students' houses once they receive them. And then finally, phase 3. So I'm almost done. How am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity? Well, first off, where am I student teaching? Greenwood Middle High School in Millerstown, Pennsylvania. And let me just say, I audibly yeeked the day that I got that email. So I will be student teaching under Mr. Michael Clark with his co-teachers, Ms. Krista Pontius and Mr. Nathan Moyer. They have 144 FFA members, which is about double the size of one of their graduating classes. And they teach 19 courses throughout the entirety of a year. As far as facilities go, they have 3 classrooms. So here we have Mr. Moyer's classroom, Mrs. Pontius's classroom, and then my desk in the back of Mr. Clark's classroom. I just thought it was cool. I was getting my own desk. And then they have a fully operational greenhouse. So they do have plants in there. They also have an aquaponics system and fish. And then finally, they have a shop. So they actually have 2 sides to a shop. There's a wood shop, and then there's the basic maintenance and repair. The basic maintenance and repair shop is where I'm going to be spending most of my time. This is my internship schedule, as well as how I'm planning to organize all of my materials. So as you can see, I have a topic area in pretty much any topic you can think of dealing with agriculture. That's why I wanted to go to this program in the first place. So I have plant and soil science, basic maintenance and repair, fish and wildlife, animal bioscience, food science, global ag, vet science, and agribusiness. I have fish and wildlife for the longest because that's something I'm comfortable in. The second longest is animal bioscience because that's not one of my strong areas. And then finally, I'm picking up electrical wiring and masonry third because ag mech is also one of the areas I'm not strong in. For my day-to-day schedule, this is kind of what it will look like. Greenwood has quite a few no school or in-service days. So that'll kind of offset the way that I teach some of my lessons a little bit, or if they have half days previously, that might also change it. But everything's pretty much laid out in a color coding system so that I know what unit I'm on when, with titles. And then all of these links go back to a Google Drive that I have under a personal account in my name. So I can go back and look at it in the future. Now, my cooperating center has a lot of strengths. So I feel like Greenwood has significant community support. I attended this thing called the Perry County Farm to Fork event this past fall. And I feel like overall, it really demonstrated how many people come back to support the program overall. I saw supporters from the community. I saw local organizations, local groups, local businesses, past educators, past members, and it was awesome. It was a fantastic meal with great people and a lot of fellowship. And so I feel like that's something that they're very strong in. For number 2, strong retention and recruitment year to year. So Greenwood and the community that's in is about the same size as my community back home. My FFA program had about 20 to 30 members in the FFA program each year. Greenwood has about triple the size of that, and I want to know how they do it. I want to know how they get students in the classroom, how they keep them. I want to know the recruitment tools. I want to know what gets the students there. So this is a huge strength. I want to see how they do it. I want to learn how they do it, and I want to take those tools to other programs in the future. And then finally, they teach to the community and industry need. When you have an occupational and a local advisory committee, you want to focus in on what the community needs and what the industry demonstrates need for. They don't teach topics just because they love the topics, even though they do love the topics that they teach. They teach it because that's what the community thinks they need overall. And that's really important looking at where I may go in the future. Now, personal reflection, a couple of things. I have some strengths. So I'm super organized. I keep all my stuff together. I try to make sure that I have everything put together at least a week beforehand. That's just the type of person I am. Or I'm handing in assignments weeks before they're due and then being told, hey, go back and look at that again, like I have been all semester. 2, I have a commitment to excellence and achievement. I'm super competitive. I don't know if any of you know that. That might be a fun little quip, but I am super committed to excellence and achievement as well as competitive. And I think that that has really strived and pushed me to become the person that I am, but also to the place that I am at Penn State. And then finally, I do have empathy. So I feel like this is a great way to interact with students and really have a welcoming overall atmosphere that will bring them in and keep them there, as well as have them come to me whenever they're having any types of challenges in and outside of the classroom. And then finally, my weaknesses. I am a perfectionist. Shocker. So I spend a lot of time doing one thing because I want to do it right the first time. And sometimes that leads to me having to go back and do it again. And then I just feel like I'm wasting time. So it's like a never ending cycle. And that's definitely something I have to work on. I'm overcommitted to a lot of things. There was a time where I had a club meeting every day of a week. and it was exhausting. But I couldn't say no, so I'm going to learn how to say no more. And then finally, content areas. Again, I'm not strong in animal science. I'm not strong in ag mechanization. And I'm hoping that throughout this internship, I'll be able to build upon those topics. For my personal goals, I want to improve my ability to focus on self-care and designate time to foster better relationships. I've really lost this component in my everyday life in state college. I do a lot for other people, but I don't do a lot for me. And I've realized that a lot this semester. So that's something I really want to focus on in the spring. 2, I want to improve my teaching techniques to foster a welcoming atmosphere for all students and spark interest. I want students of all backgrounds to be welcome into my classroom, and I want to learn how teachers bring them in and keep them there. I want to learn how to create that recruitment plan that Greenwood has. And then finally, as I have been reminded by one of my professors who's very close to me, I need to start living in the moment and avoid looking towards the future constantly. And I took that one to heart. So I do this a lot. I have a calendar. My calendar is planned out months ahead of time, just because that's the kind of person I am. I start pre-planning things. I try to get things done early so I can move on with my life. And overall, I feel like this has also led to me missing a lot of moments. I've missed a lot of moments with people that I love because I prioritize other things over that. And I've missed a lot of moments of fun and relaxation because I was more worried about what was going to be happening a week or two later. And this is something that I'm going to work on, as well as saying no in the future, because this all goes back to that overcommitment piece. That was wrong. And next, I would like to say a few of my personal contributions to our group. So I'm not the only person who's done this. There's been 5 presentations before me, and I have been blessed to have these 5 people to be my rock. I have had 5 people who understand exactly what I'm going through, who sometimes feel the exact same way I am, or they'll just look at me and say, Cheyenne, you need to shut up and listen for a couple of seconds, and then everything's fine. So I'm just so happy that we got the group that we did. And I feel like overall, my contribution is going back to the asking questions that nobody wanted to ask because I'm just that person. So thank you for being there for me. Thank you for being my group. Thanks for celebrating me because I love you all. And I can't wait for us to all be teachers in the future together. And then finally, I just want to say overall, thank you to everyone. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and I think it takes a village to raise a college student too. I have been blessed to have a support system that has been abundant with so many people, and that has been demonstrated today as well as every single day. These people that are on the screen, who are on Zoom, who are here in person, or aren't here at all because they had to work, have been there when I have needed help. They have been there for every single worry text. They have been there for every single time I am overwhelmed. They have seen me cry. They have picked me up from my weakest points, and they still continue to celebrate me each and every day. So thank you for being my support system. Thank you for being there for me. And yeah, I'm not going to cry because that's not what this is about. So are there any questions?
Good job, Cheyenne. We're going to ask the online folks to please put your questions in the chat so that Maya can communicate those. I will start with a question, which is to spin off of your comment that Greenwood, fantastic program in our state, trying to figure out their secret sauce, like you do, to recruit students and to maintain a fantastic program. And I'm going to ask you to maybe hypothesize, because I don't think you're completely in the dark as to what makes them a great program. And maybe take it from the standpoint of somebody that's outside of the ag ed orbit that doesn't understand what a school-based agricultural education program is. What is the secret sauce? What is it that makes our program so successful?
So I would say that Greenwood's secret sauce is the agricultural educators that they have there. They support the students day in and day out, and they make sure that each student is getting the type of things that they need while also still pushing them to grow and pushing them to learn. I think that that's a skill that comes with time, but it's also something that I can start learning. I once had somebody, when I was a state officer, compare me to Miss Krista Pontius, and that was like the biggest compliment that I could have possibly gotten at that time. So I'm super excited to get to work with her and Mr. Clark and Mr. Moyer to see, even with their varying years of experience, how they get that many students interested and want to stay engaged with that program. Yeah.
So you said you didn't come from a farming family, but you dove right into FFA. I didn't understand that leap, or you didn't talk about that leap. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I come from a very small high school. My graduating class was 84 people, and that was the largest in about a decade. So everyone knew everyone. My best friend, who was a year older than me, joined ag. Hojo, you didn't hear this, and I never told you this, so pretend like you're not hearing it now. I joined FFA because my best friend was in FFA. And the day that I went to the counselor and changed my schedule behind my mom's back was the day he dropped out of FFA. So that was like a double whammy on me. But my parents had a rule that if you started something, you had to finish it out until the year's end. And so I decided if I can't leave it, I'm going to embrace it. I got my first FFA jacket with my name on it. I still have it sitting in my closet at home. And I was like, yeah, I think this is my place to be. I'd finally found my thing that I felt like I didn't have before. And ag really gave that to me. Mr. Hodjanowski, who's on the Zoom, is awesome at what he does. And he really sparked a passion in me by pushing me to do quite literally everything and anything so that I could find my place and where I really had a spark. He was the first person to ever look me in the eyes and say, you're going to be an agricultural educator in the future. And I was like, no, I don't believe you, but I think I believe him now. So
Cheyenne, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the many commitments that you have, and we know that student teaching in itself is a intense commitment, and you'll be, of course, at a community approximately an hour and a half from your hour. So could you tell me, how will you manage your external commitments to the student teaching internship next semester?
So I would say overall, I'm still navigating. Actually, no, I'm not navigating time management. I'm like, at this point, I'm pretty much the queen of time management. I know where I need to be at what time. I have 3 different calendars. I have reminders on my phone and all that stuff. I will say I have slip ups at times. Like I double book myself quite a few times, especially this semester. I didn't want to own up to that, but I will. But I also think finally sitting down when I had a week to just sit and not have to do any assignments led to me realizing that sometimes I'm pushing myself to the max. And that's why I'm sick. And that's why I'm tired. And that's why I'm overwhelmed. My number one priority when I go into student teaching is going to be student teaching. I have no external commitments except for one back home that doesn't start until the summer after I'm done. And I did that purposely so that I could focus in on this internship and make sure that I'm engaging with the people around me and taking in those moments so that I can take note for future years as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to just kind of piggyback on this, and this is going to jump a little further ahead past your student teaching to when you're going to be a new ag teacher somewhere. As someone who's been in the ag community, as soon as there is new blood in the community, everybody jumps in on the new ag teacher to be joining Dairy Princess Committee, the Fair Board, help with the 4-H program, help with the County Farm Bureau, help with the community grange, and on and on and on it will go. How are you going to figure out how to say that magical word, no, and pace yourself to make smart decisions instead of blindly leap into things?
So I think the using of the magical word no starts now. So if anybody's about to ask me to do a favor for you, no. No, but seriously, I have been horrible at saying no. I have pushed myself again to the max. Like there were multiple colors on my Google Calendar day there for a solid 3 years, which has led to me being the way that I am right now. And I think ultimately reflecting on my experiences and picking the ones that also meant a lot to me and that I know I can actually provide something that is takeaway, something that's consumable, something that's going to actually help my students is most important to me. So like, for example, from the ones that you chose from, I've served on my junior fair board since I was in 9th grade. That's a really long time if you didn't know that. And yes, if I had the opportunity at another fair, I would 1000% take it, but I think it would be in limited portions and it would be limited based on what time I had that I felt like I could give up being with my family, my friends, and my students. And that's the biggest thing. Like my top 3 priorities now, as compared to where I was at in college, are my family, my friends, and my students. And then after that, everything else. And if it's taking away from those top 3 things that I know are going to continue filling my cup, I'm just simply not going to do it.
My questions for Cheyenne?
Sure. Okay, well, I had a question. You talked about inspiring curiosity and wanting your students to be curious. How will you give your students their voice and confidence to advocate for themselves to build on that curiosity?
Yeah. So one thing, going off the curiosity thing, we attended the Agricultural Inquiry Institute a couple of weeks here at Penn State, and I learned a lot of takeaways from that of how to put inquiry into the classroom. I feel like that will be a big component. But number 2, I want to have days where students are teaching students, where tasks are being done in pairs, where they're able to talk with each other and create ideas, and then come together for an overall group conversation, because I feel like the best way to get over things, or the best way to talk about topics and kind of dive deeper into asking more questions, is through discussion and through group conversation. That's been the most effective thing in my life, and I think that's how it'll continue to be for my students. But also along with that, my very first day of class, I want to create a class contract. So like, obviously I have my posters up here. They're nice and pretty. That's cool. But I also want students to hold me accountable. And I think that a big portion of that will be learning how to advocate for themselves. And I want to make that a big take. So starting out with the not teaching contract, that's later. Starting out with the classroom contract and then building from there really will allow my students to have a voice in the classroom themselves.
After Beth, I have a question.
Just a quick one. I'm really excited to hear that you've kind of brought in your priorities and that student teaching is going to be your main focus moving forward. What's one thing that you hope to accomplish and how are you going to get it?
So I think the one thing that I'm hoping to accomplish is a better understanding of how ag mechanization works in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. Because I feel like from what I've seen Mr. Clark do in the classroom, there are a lot of moving pieces and there are a lot of things that are involved. So I'm a little bit nervous about the time commitment that goes along with that in preparing materials with only having like 1 or 2 preps a day. But also like Greenwood set down the law when I went there and they were like, we don't work on lunch. So I really got to figure out how to manage my time throughout the day too. And navigate that and not overcommitting myself to also just preparing lessons and unit plans, because that's what I like to do.
Okay, the last question that I think we have time for, but it's a little bit of a philosophy question there for you, Cheyenne. You said, I know that you're aware and understand that FFA is intercurricular and a part of the curriculum. And I know that you're familiar with the FFA affiliate membership process that Pennsylvania prescribes to, where any student who walks through the door is a member of the FFA because it is part of the curriculum. But I did hear you say that FFA is not required. So I want to give you an opportunity to help me understand and explain that concept, that if FFA is part of the curriculum, how could part of the curriculum not be required?
So I think overall, looking at this, agricultural education is intercurricular. So that means that it is involved in the curriculum. FFA is a big part of that, but also realizing that FFA is not all of that. I love FFA. I was a state officer. I promote agricultural education. I promote FFA overall. But I also think that pushing students to do something that they don't want to do overall, the opportunity is there, but it needs to be presented as an opportunity, not just a requirement. And that's just my personal viewpoint on it. I think overall, going into the topic, that first day that we have class, I want to present the students with an overall calendar of events that they can participate in as an FFA member. But there's also the possibility that I could have topics that don't exactly coordinate with FFA, where there will be students who come into my classroom. And it's not a requirement for them either. For example, I had environmental and natural resources on the board. There were 5, 6, 7 people in my environmental and natural resources class in high school that were not an FFA. They were not an ag kid, quote unquote. So having that requirement for them as well, I just think is unfair, but also giving them the option that if they so choose after being in that classroom to pursue agricultural education, it should be a choice to them. Thank you.
We got time to squeeze in one more from our online.
All right, so Audie Cherry asks, or says, you are obviously very detail oriented and a planner. When teaching plans don't work out in the classroom, on trips, with FFA, etc., how will you navigate those situations?
So ironically enough, this just happened to me not that long ago. I went to San Antonio with the Penn State cohort, and then I flew back myself. And it just so happened that my flight got delayed and I missed a plane, and I may have cried a little bit in the airport, but then everything was okay. So I think overall, taking that deep breath, calming down, and then going step by step and trying to have solutions. I am also the person who typically has 2 to 3 backup plans. Like there's plan A, there's plan B, and there's plan C. And I'm going to make sure to have a folder, a field trip folder, as I've been told multiple times it will be called, that I'm going to carry around with me as well, so I can have all that information if plans happen to fall through. Thanks, Audie.
Can you all join me in congratulating Ms. Bastain-Brown?